Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So good evening and welcome to our Wednesday evening study and discussion of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. We're reading his talk, The Real and the Apparent Man, in which he, as Sri Ramakrishna might say, lays the whole thing out fully and plainly. Before we begin, are there any questions or comments left from prior discussion? Anything that is still unresolved in your mind about what it is that we're moving through, so that we don't move ahead and leave a shaky spot? All right, very well. So these spheres and devils and gods and reincarnations and transmigrations are all mythology. So also is this human life. It's all mythology. So also is this human life. The great mistake that men always make is to think that this life alone is true. They understand it well enough when other things are called mythologies, but are never willing to admit the same of their own position. So this is what I mean by laying it all out plainly. The whole thing as it appears is mere mythology. The whole thing as it appears is mere mythology. And the greatest of all lies is that we are bodies, which we never were, nor even can be. It is the greatest of all lies that we are mere men. We are the God of the universe. In worshiping God, we have been always worshiping our own hidden self. Now, for people who come from a fairly orthodox Christian background, this would be regarded as heresy. Is there anything there that anyone would like to discuss? There was a note. I couldn't read what it said. What was the note? The chat note.
Page number. That's all. It's just the page numbers where you are at, Brother Shankara.
I see.
That's all.
All right. So is there anything about this, as I said, For those raised in an Orthodox Christian or Judeo-Christian background, this is heresy. Any concern, doubt, question from anyone, or any comment from your own wisdom or experience about what the Swami has said. Very well. The worst lie that you ever tell yourself is that you were born a sinner or a wicked man. Once again, flying directly in the face of the idea of original sin as presented in the Judeo-Christian tradition, that you were born a sinner or a wicked person. He alone is a sinner who sees a sinner in another man. He alone is a sinner missing the mark who sees a sinner in another man. Suppose there is a baby here and you place a bag of gold on the table. Suppose a robber comes and takes the gold away. To the baby, it is all the same, because there is no robber inside, there is no robber outside. Now, this is a key point about how we're projecting this mythology, how we are projecting this idea. We see something on the outside because we contain it on the inside. Now, it's not that we are wrong for containing it on the inside. We are eons old compiling, and we've been compiling mental impression after mental impression after mental impression over eons, the Swami has told us in earlier talks in this Jnana Yoga, that lead us to this misapprehension. It is quite natural. So we project the universe based on these, what the Swami is calling mythological experiences of the universe. Because there is no robber inside the baby, there is no robber outside. To sinners and vile men, there is vileness outside, but not to good men. So the wicked see this universe as a hell, and the partially good or the partially perfected or partially purified, and the partially purified see it as a heaven, while the perfect beings realize it is God Himself. Then alone the veil falls from their eyes, and the man purified and cleansed finds his whole vision changed. Then alone the veil falls from the eyes, and the man purified and cleansed finds his whole vision changed. This is what is produced by spiritual practice. As we descend into the being that we really are inside, we find that all those things that we believed were true on the outside are only provisionally true. They come, they go, and they are a commonly held belief that we share with others, which is the definition of a mythology. The veil falls from the eyes, and the human being, purified and cleansed, finds his or her whole vision changed. The bad dreams that have been torturing him for millions of years, and why not billions, the billions that we are? Because we didn't take form enough. We didn't take form enough to be tortured by these bad dreams until some millions of years ago. The bad dreams that have been torturing him for millions of years all vanish. And he who was thinking of himself either as a man or a god or a demon, he who was thinking of himself as living in low places, in high places, on earth, in heaven, and so on, finds that he is really omnipresent, and that all time is in him, and that he is not in time, that all the heavens are in him, that he is not in any heaven, and that all the gods that ever were, that man ever worshipped, and all the gods that man ever worshipped are in him, and that he is not in any one of these gods. He was the manufacturer of gods and demons, of men and plants and animals and stones, and the real nature of man now stands unfolded to him as being higher than heaven, more perfect than this universe of ours, more infinite than infinite time, more omnipresent than the omnipresent ether. Any comments from your own wisdom or experience about your knowledge of what the Swami is talking about, or any concern or question that you'd like to raise?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
So I have been sort of mulling over this whole mythological meaning of mythology. So from Google, I went on, and then what I sort of understood was that mythology is described as an allegorical narrative or a visual representation in which a character, place, or event can be interpreted to represent a hidden meaning with moral or political significance. And that kind of hit me that, the like Swami says that all the he was a manufacturer of gods, demons, men, plants, animals, stones. So, and the real nature now stands unfolded to him. So when one, I guess, attains to that level of clarity, then we can, I guess, really understand that everything is a mythology.
Yes. But the Swami is not speaking of mythology in allegorical terms. It's not an allegory. It is a relative or provisional reality that we are projecting. The thing that we must understand as the gods, that is the God of the universe, that one God, not gods, but the God of the universe that is doing this, that we as that God wanted to forget ourselves in order to dream the dream of manyness. I am one, I shall body myself forth as many. This is the story that Uddalaka tells his son Svetaketu in the Chandogya Upanishad. And of course, it's said elsewhere. And in the Gita, it says, she or he who sees Brahman in every action attains to Brahman. It is that one that is doing everything. As Sri Ramakrishna says, God alone is real. God alone is the doer. All else is illusory or mythological. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means it exists because we are causing it to exist. And one of the definitions, and the one that the Swami is very strongly using here, one of the definitions of a myth or mythology is a commonly held belief or a system of commonly held beliefs. This is how mythologists often like to think of it, those who study myth. It is a shared belief among a group of human beings, or, as the Swami points out, we have this commonly held belief that we are the body and that the universe exists outside of us. He says it's simply not the case. And it's not an allegory, it's simply a misapprehension, a shared misapprehension. And we're taught this misapprehension very thoroughly and very carefully. That was mentioned this last Sunday in speaking about Don Juan Matus. And our membership, we become, as he said, a fully fledged member when we can make the perceptual interpretations of this infinite reality that the Swami is speaking of, the omnipresent, more omnipresent than the omnipresent ether, the infinite possibilities of that omnipresence. We can find them to this experience as human beings. And the thing for us to remember is we do it because we want to. When we stop wanting to, we can stop. But until we stop wanting to, we may have some realization, we may have some insights, but it will not end in the sense that the Swami is talking about it ending when we truly apprehend, realize the nature of what we're doing. Thank you, Swayam. Anything else from anyone?
Thank you for the clarification, Brother Shankar.
Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankar, may I ask a question?
Of course you may.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the part, we are the God of the universe. In worshiping God, we have always been worshiping our own hidden self. I was wondering, why is it that it's not obvious to us, this fact, and that it is like a hiding game? What is the point of it playing a hiding game, not knowing that God is the self?
As I said earlier, dear, we did this because we wanted to. We wanted to have the experience of manyness. We, as the divine being, the one ahamkara, or the one atman, that's that hidden self that he's talking about. We want to do this. Isn't it true, Roberto? I'm sorry, Roberto. Isn't it true, Roberto? It certainly is true of this, for example. I want to do this. Isn't it true that you, Roberto, want your life, and you want your life to continue? So we do this. It's not a game that's being played on us. It's a game that we have created for ourselves. And in the Vedas, it's called the Day of Brahma. And it happens again and again and again. And each time it takes over 100 billion years, we're told, and the cosmologists now agree. Those who have worked out the value of the Higgs boson they were floored by the fact that the value that they came up with portended a universe that would be anti-entropic, primarily anti-entropic, for some 55 billion years or so. And then entropy would become more and more predominant. And we're seeing that already, though it is only, according to the cosmologists, this day of Brahma, as it's said in the Vedas, but where the Big Bang is only 13.7 billion years old. And yet already the entropic forces, which we have now identified as dark energy and dark matter, are becoming more and more prevalent. They were apparently not there in the earliest universe. Stephen Hawking was on the point of saying that they are a creation of black holes. He was toying with this idea when he died. But we don't know what dark energy and dark matter are, but we know that they are an entropic force. Well, actually, dark matter, apparently, is an anti-entropic force. It holds things together more tightly than we think they should be held together. There's more matter in some form that we haven't identified. But dark energy is very, very definitely entropic. It is forcing the universe to expand faster and faster. The James Webb Telescope, the new telescope that is just now coming online and will begin to deliver its real science in about a year, may reveal some of these mysteries in a much greater sense. But your question was, why this hiddenness? Why this game, seemingly, of a hidden self? And the answer, apparently, is because we like it. That's Swami Sarvapriyananda's answer, as I heard him delivered in person in March of 2016. Thank you for that very, very on-point question, Roberto. Anyone else? Anything?
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Haima.
I am thinking, I don't think our elders even knew that we are worshiping the God within ourselves. They told us to go to the temples, churches, and pray God, Bhakti Yoga. At the same time, my elders told me, Atma Rama, Rama is inside us, but they never said we are worshiping our own inside God. It was never revealed this clearly as Swami is just opening my brain and eyes. Um, Mother always used to say, first you have to satisfy your Atma Rama. Whenever she's hungry, oh, my Atma Rama is hungry, please give me some food at 90 years of age. She used to say that.
But that's all true, Haima.
That is true. She was right.
It's all true.
But it was never
But
said.
because if that Rama is not satisfied,
Yeah,
then the whole thing is dissatisfied.
that's right. But
So this
worshiping.
this mythology
Yeah.
that we are practicing contains, it doesn't, this is what is so true about mythology. It isn't that it isn't true.
Yeah.
It's just provisionally true. And its truth is shown by how many people believe it and practice it. So though these truths are in the Upanishads,
Yes.
they are in the Gita. If you read The Field and Its Knower, that chapter of the Gita,
Yes.
Krishna explains very carefully
He does. He does. He sure does.
exactly what the Swami is saying. He uses very different language, but it's exactly the same message.
But
There's only one knower, and that knower has created the field, which is the body and everything that the body projects for its own purposes. So yes, Haima, your elders taught you that because, first of all, they believed it, and
They did.
secondly, most people are not going to be able to live in the world, particularly as youngsters, if they're given the full truth right away. We have to have the prefrontal cortex online and functioning, which makes everything more sensible. Then we can begin to think these thoughts, which means somewhere in our 20s, which is exactly why the first house or first stage of human life, according to the Sanatana Dharma way, ends at age 25. And then the second stage comes on, which is the grihastha or householder stage, in which you're able to learn the lessons of mastering the game of life, which is exactly what your elders were teaching you and what your mother was saying. If Rama's not satisfied, the Rama within is not satisfied. Hopeless condition, as Swami Chaitananda would say.
Yeah, but if every parent teaches their children, we are worshiping the God within us, we need to behave like a godly way, then we wouldn't have this many conflicts in the world. Even I didn't teach my children that. I told them God is within us too. You don't have to necessarily go to temple. He's right there. I always put my hand on the heart like my parents did. I always told them, but I never said, we are worshiping the God within us. We need to behave like God. Yes, I do. Through meditation, I observed it. It is very evident. Liberation happens through meditation, and you find the divine within self. But I never taught my children either. Now I feel.
It's because it doesn't seem, first of all, it doesn't seem practical for us to behave that way. And it doesn't, and what would they do? Why would they take their studies seriously
Oh, that's what it is for the
It's partly that, yes. It's the practicality.
really.
Yeah.
That seems so unfair to all of us. We need to be told we are worshiping the God within us. We need to behave godly. At the same time, go on with the worldly things and
Yeah.
not be in conflict with others because
Yes.
everybody has
Which
God within them.
is asking children to hold two different thoughts firmly in their mind at the same time. That's not likely to happen in most children.
Oh, it
Uh,
doesn't. I can see my grandchildren. I can see that.
yes.
They tell me Jesus is the only God, Nani. That's what they tell me. I
Right,
said,
of
well,
course.
Jesus is God, Rama is God, Krishna is God. I go on with this. It's okay to, but we do to behave like that. Now I'm able to tell my grandchildren, but I didn't tell that to my kids. Now I
Well,
am,
no, of
it's so
course.
open to us through Swami. It's so open to us through Swami and through meditation. Meditation really
Well,
reveals.
this meditation, the practice of spiritual disciplines, meditation among them, will
Definitely.
make this real for us
Yeah.
because we access that divine presence within.
We open that door with the key. Key is the meditation. We open the
Or
door.
or don't we mustn't say just meditation, dear.
Maybe other
There
ways
are
too.
there are the four yogas.
Other ways. Raja Yoga, all
The
karma, jnana.
yeah, all four are there. And there are more than the four, but those are the four powerful ones that Swami Vivekananda taught.
Exactly. I see
So
that.
yes, meditation can be very
One
important.
way. It's one
But there
way.
are people who simply cannot meditate.
That's true.
They simply cannot. And so they practice karma yoga, perhaps along with a little bhakti yoga.
Bhakti yoga.
And Krishna says, that's fine, I'll get right behind it and make it work.
Thank you
That's
so
what he
much.
says.
This is just amazingly.
Brother, is
officially.
it also that these are like tools, like, for example, let's say if you're a father and your, son who or daughter who you need to take care of is sort of dying of like not dying, but is hungry and they need food and you need to earn. And at that time, if you sit meditating, this is a mythology. It won't work.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
This is why there are the four houses in Sanatana Dharma, in the so-called Hindu way. The first is the brahmacharya, the student phase, where you're learning to get your feet in the world and learning how to earn a living and so on. Then you practice that as a householder. Most people are not going to become monastics, and there's no call that they should.
But brother, I even feel like even when you are, let's say, a householder, and let's say, God forbid, someone in your family dies, at that time you can actually bring in this tool that this is a mythology.
Well, you
I
can,
guess there are certain situations where you can sort of select what sort of from the four yogas, what principles to use at that point in time. And like you always mention, keeping multiple, not just two, but multiple thoughts at the same time. And then you use your discrimination to select, okay, this particular situation, I need to pick up this tool from my toolbox.
well, the ideal is always there in the background. Yeah, for a true spiritual aspirant, the ideal is, and the ideal represents the truth, is always there in the background. And it provides the reassurance that we need. But then there is this provisional reality that we share. So unless you're going to sign off from it, then you need to hold these at least two thoughts in your mind at the one time. But it isn't like you select the one when it's the right time. That's always there in the background for the spiritual aspirant. The truth is always there.
But brother, like the other aspect I also comes to my mind is, compared to the responsibilities I have, like if I were to consider a responsibility of a monk who has renounced the world, but who's responsible for managing thousands of people who have dedicated their lives, like in a leadership position, let's say in the Ramakrishna order, I think they have to be much more grounded than probably I am.
Well, one would hope they are, because they have these responsibilities. We hope that those people who have huge worldly responsibilities, for example, the President of the United States, we hope that he's very grounded. And it's reassuring, at least from here, that he is a sincere and practicing Catholic, because the Catholic lineage and Catholic tradition, though it has had many abuses, no question, over the millennia, couple of 1,000 years, it still is a rich, deep, and true spiritual path. And as Swami Vivekananda said, the test of a religion's truth, of its veracity, is, does it produce saints? So I am, for example, very glad that Joseph Biden is a sincere and practicing Catholic and is friends with, so to speak, the Pope. Now, of course, the president and general secretary of the Ramakrishna Order, they have very different responsibilities. But yes, we pray that they have access to the deepest kind of wisdom and make their decisions accordingly. And each of us that has our, thimbleful of responsibilities by comparison with these others, we mustn't compare ourselves with them. We only think, what is necessary for me to do, and what truth must I cling to. Thank you, Rajiv. Anything else from anyone? All right.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
So when, as children are growing up and, up to the age of 25, and they have to learn what they have to do to stand on their feet, besides leading by example, and also the underlying belief that we are not the doers, and how do we enable them to grow in a way that they are not inducted into this mythology?
They have to be inducted into this mythology unless they're going to become a monk or nun, dear. They have to be. They have to share. But how can you teach them? Well, Albert Einstein said, if you want your children to be intelligent, what is it to be intelligent? To have the tools to make good and decisions. If you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. Why? Because this opens up their imagination. This opens up their gift of imagination, which is suppressed in many children. You've heard me get on the stump about that. So the other thing, what can you do? You can give them the Gita to read. You can give them the Bible to read and say, this is the great wisdom as passed along to us by these great teachers. My son was very fortunate in that he became Swami Prabhavananda's disciple when he was 9 years old. But that didn't mean that he did not have a very difficult life. For some years, he's now very stable and very successful. But boy, howdy, there were about 25 to 40 years in there that were really rugged because of his prarabdha karma. So we do the best we can to prepare our children, but once they're grown, we cannot protect them from their karma. As Swami Prabhavananda taught us, People have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. Sustain and comfort.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from anyone before we read on?
Brother Shankara, this is McKaylee.
Yes,
Could you
Michaela.
please repeat what you just said? People have a right to their pain and suffering. Do
This
not.
is a teaching of Swami Prabhavananda. People have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. Sustain and comfort. People have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. Sustain and comfort. Why did he say this? We do not learn through our happiness.
True.
We learn through pain and suffering. And so if we mix in and try to, first of all, we don't know enough to know how to really remove their pain and suffering. Only the avatars and their direct disciples have this kind of knowledge because they have this tremendous insight.
Thank you.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
in that sustain and comfort, it's easier for me to understand how to comfort, but what does sustain entail?
Well, what is it to sustain someone? To give them what's necessary for them to continue to live. So if they have lost their ability to earn money because of their self-medication with drugs, for example, then you give them some money. If they just are one of those people who just cannot seem to keep it together to pay their rent, and occasionally they're not able to pay their rent and they come to you and say, can you help me with the rent? Well, if you can, you say yes. Swami Prabhavananda also said, when you are asked, if you can, give. So we all know what the word sustain means. It means to give that which is necessary to maintain life. And the prayer is, of course, that the person will regain their balance and will regain their ability to handle things on their own. And that is, again, I can speak from personal experience. There were many times in my and Marjorie's son's life where we had to sustain and comfort him when he was otherwise, for that time being, unable to do it for himself.
Thank you.
And now, if you met him when he was here at Christmas with his lovely wife, Betsy, then you see this is now a truly remarkable man. And he never stopped being a devotee, but it certainly did get sidetracked. Anything else from anyone?
I have one comment, Brother Shankara. If we keep the same love even during their painful and suffering times, just as when they were happy times, if we continue to stay the same way and give the same love, they will turn around and come back to, like you gave the example. And that's very important for us to be accepting, and then keeping that love, unconditional love, no matter what.
They may.
There is a chance, there is a high chance that they would turn around.
Yes.
That's all. Thank you so much.
For those of you who knew my younger brother, who died quite tragically about 1.5 years ago now, love was showered on him, not just by me, but by many. But there was no way that he could, though people tried to sustain and comfort him, it was seemingly not possible. So I use these personal examples, not because they're more significant than anyone else's, not at all in any way, simply because I know them and can speak from the heart about them. My son, Marjorie's and my son, thank God, it took. With Evan, it did not. Anything else from anyone? Okay. When we see all these things, when we experience, when we know all these things, then the Swami said that we are that the real nature of man stands unfolded to him as being higher than heaven, more perfect than this universe of ours, more infinite than infinite time, more omnipresent than the omnipresent ether. Then thus alone man becomes fearless. Thus alone man becomes fearless and becomes free. Then all delusions cease. Delusions are equivalent here to the mythology. Then all delusions cease, all miseries vanish, all fears come to an end forever. Birth goes away, and with it death. Pains fly, and with them fly away pleasures. Pains fly, and with them fly away pleasures. Earths vanish, and with them vanish heavens. Bodies vanish, and with them vanishes the what is that word? Oh, the mind. Bodies vanish, and with them vanishes the mind also. For that man disappears the whole universe, as it were. This searching, moving, continuous struggle of forces stops forever. And that which was manifesting itself as force and matter, as struggles of nature, as nature itself, as heavens and earths and plants and animals and men and angels. All that becomes transfigured into one infinite, unbreakable, unchangeable existence, and the knowing man finds that he is one with that existence. Now, what does the knowing mean? Knowing means having experienced what Jesus spoke of as that peace that passeth all understanding. In Sanskrit, the word is samadhi. Is samadhi just the result of the workbook written by Patanjali in Raja Yoga as the Yoga Sutras? that is handed down to us as Raja Yoga. No, no. Each of the 4 yogas has a path to this realization. And it is a realization that is above all intellectual activity. The intellectual activity is part of the mythology. That's why he says that with the body goes, the mind also goes. So is there any question or comment about that? The fact that it isn't just available through meditation. To the jnani, it is available through discrimination, reason, renunciation, and satyagraha, insistence on the truth. The jnani simply annihilates the mythology by insisting it is not so. Not this, not that. The not this and not that are all the aspects of the mythology. So the jnani annihilates the mythology, and with it, the mind. The karma yogi offers every aspect of themselves and every aspect of their lives to the divine presence. And what happens over time is this sense of being an individual self apart from everything else, this self-centered existence dissolves. And instead, what arises is thou, 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 and thou alone. That which is manifesting all this, that which Krishna so carefully describes in chapters 4, 5, and 6 of the Gita, and then in chapter, I think, 13, the field and its knower. For the bhakta, a bhakta becomes lost in wonder, lost in awe. They see, this cannot possibly be this little being that is projecting all this. It cannot possibly be. It's too wondrous. It's too glorious. It's too full of that which arises as awe and reverence and ultimately overwhelming love in us. And so you become lost in the bhava, the attitude of love, love for the divine. And as such, you become absorbed. And so that which is participating in the mythology, again, in a way, dissolves. And you're left with simply that which is doing all this. And this is what Sri Ramakrishna calls the highest state for the bhakta. Everything is the divine presence. No matter where the eye falls, no matter where the finger touches, no matter where the tongue tastes, it's all the divine and is cause for a loving relationship. So it isn't just through meditation that we reach this. Though Patanjali's workbook, the Yoga Sutras, is, as Swami Prabhavananda points out in his interpretation and translation, it's very, very reliable if you pursue it, which Haima has told us many times from her own experience. The reliability of this way of pursuing this inner knowledge. And I think others of us can assert that as well, that we've had profound experiences through the practice of meditation. And if you take initiation from the Ramakrishna Order Swamis, you find that you're given instruction for practicing in such a way that combines all four yogas. The operative parts of them to dispel the mythology and ultimately allow you to sink beneath it. Anything else from anyone?
Brother, where would Tantra fall into, like the four yogas?
Tantra does not fall into the four yogas. Tantra is a system all its own, and it is not for the faint of heart, dear. Tantra, if you look into the practices of Tantra, the practices of Tantra are meant to allow you to gain conscious control over all three worlds: waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, or the waking awareness, the active subconscious, the latent subconscious. And then, of course, if you gain control of all three of those, the latent subconscious is also spoken of as the unconscious. If you gained conscious control of all of those, then you are omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. This is what Sri Ramakrishna did. He mastered all 64 of the disciplines of Tantra. But it does not, it's not a parallel for any of the other yogas as taught by Vivekananda. It is, if you, Rajiv, if you and I together made an agreement, all right, we're going to practice the first three disciplines of Tantra, which are disciplines that allow us to gain control of our waking awareness. And we mastered those three during the rest of our lifetimes, we would have achieved very much indeed. There would be 61 more to go.
Wow.
So Tantra is not for, and is not recommended for most human beings. And even, it doesn't matter householder or monastic. Very few. The saints that I've known in the Ramakrishna order, the Swamis that I've known that I would call saintly, Tantra has not been a part of the program. They have practiced one of the bhavas that was taught by Sri Ramakrishna. And they're very traditional.
But mother worship can be considered devotion, right? It's not a part of Tantra, like mother worship.
No. Mother worship is not. Mother worship and Tantra can go together as they did in Sri Ramakrishna's life. But it's, as I say, he had a very accomplished teacher in the Bhairavi Brahmani. She had herself mastered those disciplines. She was herself a realized soul. And so she was able to guide him through the practice of these. But where do you find such a teacher? Tantra is not for us. And I mean that most sincerely. But mother worship, well, mother worship can be very much a part of bhakti. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Rajiv. I'm glad you brought up Tantra because Vivekananda did not practice Tantra, for example. What Sri Ramakrishna said is, you don't have to do that. I've done all that for you. And he gave them the fruits of his direct disciples. He gave them the fruits of his spiritual achievements. Anything else from anyone? All right, it's 8:31. I think we'll leave it there. One infinite, unbreakable, unchangeable existence, and the knowing human being finds that he or she is one with that existence. That's where we'll start next week. All that becomes transfigured into one infinite, unbreakable, unchangeable existence, and the knowing person finds that they are one with that existence. Any final thought from anyone? And by the way, none of this is reason for us to get long-faced. As Vivekananda himself said, bring a smile to people's faces. And Swami Prabhavananda very drolly would say, in the most humorous way, he would say, we will have no long-faced religion here. We will have no long-faced religion. Oh, this is a reason for joy. So, any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. Until next time, this is the last of the classes for until Saturday. We will have our Saturday class on Swami Prabhavananda's interpretation and commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, How to Know God. And then this Sunday, I'm so pleased that we will have as a guest speaker someone who's been a dear friend practically since I got here all those years ago. His name is Gareth Young, and he is an ordained Buddhist teacher. And he will speak to us on something very appropriate to our study of Jnana Yoga, which is not knowing, the practice of not knowing, which is just another way of saying annihilating the mythology. Anything else from anyone? Please do join us on Sunday. Gareth will speak from the chapel and it will be zoomed from there. And that's Mother's Day also. So, take time out of your Mother's Day to be with us and listen to Gareth. All right, dears. Om Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya, Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this mythology of endless noise and relentless delusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai Durga Durga Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind, and may we go forward in the loving and protective embrace, the sustaining and comforting embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Jai Shri Ramakrishna Jai Ma.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, dears. Until Saturday or
Thank you,
whenever we
Brother
see
Shankara.
you.
Saturday.